Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Out go the gunboats. Royal Navy sends 4 warships into English Channel to warn French trawlers to stay away from British fish as Brexit deal comes into force. And as far as I'm concerned, it's about bloody time. The British Navy has always been something to be heralded about the world over, and so it's about time that we showed our force in the UK after Brexit. And I know that the EU wishes to make their own military force instead of NATO. I know it's been going for a little while now that is their intention, but NATO is there for a reason. And of course, us as our lovely little rock in the Atlantic Ocean, as Jeremy Clarkson puts it, is worthwhile and worth defending. And we are supposed to have fishing rights or territorial rights 200 miles out, or halfway to the nearest country, which is 12 miles in the English Channel, and we wish to, in order to defend that. And yes, this may be reminiscent of the Cod Wars with Iceland, but nonetheless, it is indeed something worth fighting for because it does concern our sovereignty. And of course, we do have the Commonwealth to call upon should we see the need, and NATO if it were to really get that bad. But this is simply a show of force with our £100 million gunboats, or warships if you prefer, in order to show that you better not mess with us. We are going to defend our territory and our rights. Europe, or Germany, has tried to invade us before with Operation Sea Lion, and they failed. And if they try again, they will fail again. We will fight with growing superiority in the air. We will fight them on the beaches, and we will never surrender. Churchill said it best, and I hold that speech to heart. Link in description for those that wish to hear it. So, naval warships left Portsmouth for English Channel hours before New Year's Eve. Assigned to protect the UK's new fishing rights in the Brexit trade deal. Under terms of the deal, boats from France and the European Union can still fish in British waters, but over the next 5.5 years, a quarter of quota will be handed over to UK, about 1.5% per year. Yes, it's not ideal. Yes, it's not perfect, but this is the deal in which we have to deal with. And it is better than nothing. And of course, bear in mind that in 5 years' time, we can decide if we wish to change the terms of the deal, or at least attempt to renegotiate at that time. So the Royal Navy sent 4 warships into the English Channel to warn French trawlers to stay away from British fish as the Brexit deal came into force. Hours before the deal took effect on New Year's Day, the boat, armed with cannons and machine guns, not great cannons like 30mm cannons. Yep, the Mosquito of the World War II carried 4 of them, but okay, cool, yeah. Left Portsmouth to put a stop to any illegal fishing in UK fishing grounds. And even if you have that firepower, it's not as if you're going to use it. The £100 million ship, HMS Trent, which is mainly due to radar and technological intervention, whereas, as I say, even in the Second World War, they had Sea Hurricanes, which had 4 30mm cannons, or 2 40mm cannons, and they were powered with rockets. But the main time they were used, it was with a jockey, as it happened, who used rockets to come off a warship, and then took down a German bomber, Focke-Wulf 200, I believe it was, 4-engined bomber, and then had to crash land in the sea, so he ejected and was picked up. It was a single-use aircraft, so it wasn't really very favourable because they didn't have the landing strips for it, and so they preferred to use the Swordfish if they were to use torpedo bombers, for example, because they didn't take much room. In fact, for those interested in Second World War history, the Swordfish was such a low, slow flying biplane that when it landed on aircraft carriers or warships, because it did require such little landing strip or takeoff strip, that if there was a strong headwind, it would land backwards. Yes, because its stall speed was lower than the speed of the aircraft carrier, or the ship that was going to take the landing. So much so, because it would land backwards, that the crewmen had to jump onto the wings in order to keep the aircraft down, because otherwise it would take off again. And then, of course, they had to tie it down. That's the kind of aircraft we're talking about here. So, of course, it was also so slow that the Germans, who had their sights aimed on monoplanes instead of biplanes as the Swordfish was, the ferry Swordfish, would think, oh, yeah, we're going to aim in front so that our flat cannons or cannons would take care of it as it would fly into the spray, would be aiming far too far in front because the ferry Swordfish was far too bloody slow for them to hit. That their high explosive fragmentary incendiary rounds would explode far too far in front of the aircraft to cause any damage. and that was their line of defense, not being quick and stealthy and below radar, but just being so bloody slow. But I suppose that's a story for another time, as we're getting back to present day. So, yes, as they say, we're protecting fishing rights, which aren't ideal, but as you can see from the map below, that shows the current fishing waters. And of course there is St. Helens, and not St. Helens, that's south of Africa, but there are islands which are wishing to be claimed out here, northeast of the UK, in order to extend our fishing rights and territory, because, as I say, it is 200 miles or halfway to the nearest island, for example, Greenland or Iceland, just there, in order to have more of a territory and fishing rights, as it needs be at the moment. And then, of course, we've got into the high seas, but it should be 200 miles. So, there are 4 main ships used to patrol the UK, and all of them were used, of course, New Year's Eve coming on to New Year's Day, as a show of force. They aren't supposed to be. It should be 1 and then a couple in reserve, and they're taken out so that they have 1 main warship with a fleet, of course, as backup, as historically it tends to be, and they would rotate. But they thought, hey, show of force, let's show that we're serious, let's send them all out. And this probably bears repeating that the Air Force, the Navy, and the Army all report not to the Parliament, not to the Prime Minister, but to the Queen. Yes, to the Crown, to the monarchy. They are not for the government to throw around as they wish. It is actually down to our dear Queen Elizabeth II in order to decide what to do with them. If there were to be a revolution, for example, then they would, provided that they agree to their Pledge of Allegiance, hold allegiance to the Crown and not to the Parliament. I'm sure we all agree that the Queen could be doing more than she is at the moment. However, she does decide to stay out of politics most of the time, and therefore agree with Parliament most of the time. However, if things get too serious, then she does most certainly step in. And I do not mean Diana by this. That's a whole different story. So HMS Seven was also deployed in the Channel for exercises. Under the terms of the Brexit trade deal, boats from France and the rest of the EU can still fish in British water, but over the next 5.5 years, a quarter of their quota will be handed over to the UK. Talk of naval vessels being dispatched to deal with any clashes in fishing grounds if a trade deal was not agreed with the EU were floated in the run-up to New Year's Day, and, despite reaching a settlement, the boats still left Portsmouth at the end of 2020, as well they should do. Because if the EU has showed us anything, it is that they will try to take advantage of any weakness that we may have. So it is vitally important that we do have a show of force at least in order to say, we're not going to accept this. Because do not forget, it is because of the French Navy that migrants have been able to make their way across with their dinghies, because they have been given supplies, they've been given food and water, and even towed across the channel in order to get into British water by the French Navy, as shown by people as much as Nigel Farage, who has depicted this unequivocally, uncontroversially. He has shown this. So this is definitely true. No doubt. So I know YouTube censorship doesn't like this kind of thing, but there is video footage of it. So yes, they have definitely tried. And I think that the UK warships, as they wish to be called, but the size of them, they are essentially gunboats, that they are aimed at that kind of thing as well. To just remind the French Navy that they have surrendered more times than they have claimed victory against the UK, and it is worth remembering that that is a reputation that we maintain and intend to withhold. So unless the French wish to intend to wave their lovely nationalistic white flag again, then it is best that they leave us alone. And I really, really, really do hope that the Navy, as well as the Air Force and the military, of course, and idealistically the rest of the Britain, does remember that this is a nation worth defending, worth fighting for, and we do have the capability to defend ourselves. As tiny as we might be as our rock in the North Atlantic, we do have things worth fighting for, and we do have the capability to defend ourselves. And it might be as menial or tedious as fishing rights within the European Union, but that is feeding the people of this great nation. That is providing jobs to the people of this great nation. That is historic to the people of this great nation. And that is worth fighting for. That is worth defending. It goes far beyond the immediate intervention that you might see. It is paramount to our great nation. We are an island nation. We are lucky enough to have seas all around us, and therefore we have our God-given rights to be able to fish in the areas around our nation. Other countries with better climates have their God-given rights in order to farm better crops or more Mediterranean crops than we do, and we do not have that luxury. But we do have the luxury, the privilege, and in fact the right to fish around our great nation, and we intend to do so. And we will show our show of force in order to defend that right. And good luck to France. And if Germany wishes to make a stand, we will show them again, as we have twice before. But I don't think they want that embarrassment at that time. But that's it from me. So as always, let me know what you guys think down below. How grateful you are to our great servicemen and women for not cucking to this bloody ideological, cultural Marxism that seems to be infecting most of us, or most of them at least, but they are still holding the fort, maintaining the fight. Or if you think, no, this is wrong, this is supposed to be a civil relationship, we should not be sending out warships, then let me know down below. I'm always intrigued to hear what you guys have to say. And as always, until next time, have a good one.